Hi, and welcome to my channel. This is Read with Anna, a segment of my YouTube channel where I read and review books that I enjoy or dislike. It doesn't really matter, but I read, and I hope that you guys enjoy. First things first, I would like to say that I am a lover of storytelling. I love books. I love reading. I have loved reading my whole life, and I feel like I want to come onto YouTube and read and review books, but I want to do it in the spirit of love and of joy for reading. I have a really high average on my Goodreads. I think my average is like a 3.98 or even a 4, because I love reading, I love books, and even the most awful books, I usually tend to score them higher than some other people normally would, but that's because I'm an optimist. I don't know. I really am easily amused, and I'm also not looking into the nitty gritty of world building and of all that jazz. And so I don't know. I don't want to be judged on here a little too harshly, but I'm just putting it out there. I'm not going to be super duper critical and I'm also not a literary analyst. But truly, I love the art of storytelling. I love writing. I myself am an aspiring author. I hope to one day finish my novel and publish it. So I'm not here to criticize writers as harshly as I've seen some other people criticize writers on here, because writing is really hard. It's a really hard craft. It's really hard to write something, put your whole soul into it, and then put it out into the universe and then have people critique it. So at the end of the day, if you are watching this review, just know that I'm coming at this from a very light heart and just love for the art of storytelling. So that being said, the first book of my review journey that I'm going to do here on YouTube is called These Hollow Vows, by Lexi Ryan. Sorry, sometimes I can't speak English very well, and that's okay. These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This is a YA fantasy novel, and I got to read it for free using my LA Public Library card. So shout out to LA Public Library, LA County Library as well, and Torrance Library. I have 3 library cards. I have 3 library cards, and I love using my library cards to read books for free. I'm actually reading the second novel of this series already using my Hoopla app. I want to shout out the library system because it's free. For somebody like me right now that I can't really afford to buy books. I also recently, in my later 20s, I've realized that I don't really like buying books anymore because I don't know if I actually will like them. Also, I'm very limited in my space. What you see behind me is the only space that I have, and it's all taken up. I live in a very small apartment. But yeah, so let's get started. I've read some reviews that state that it is very similar to A Court of Thorn and Roses, the series of A Court of Thorn and Roses, and I can see it. I'm gonna just put that out there, and now we're gonna discuss that a little bit. But also, it's very different than A Court of Thorn and Roses, and I actually really enjoyed this, and I gave this 4 stars. Again, I give a lot of books 4 stars because I like books. I like reading. If it entertained me, if it had me gasping, feeling some type of way, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. And this book definitely had me gasping and feeling some type of way. So it got 4 stars for me. And the second book is better than the first book. So, it's a journey. Writing is hard. Again. Cool. So the premise of this novel is an indentured servant girl who is a thief and tends to steal from the rich around her, kind of like a Robin Hood. She is given up by her mother to her uncle when she's 9 years old. So she's abandoned by her family after her father dies and there's fire. And her aunt, after her uncle dies, her married aunt, I guess, whatever, she's evil. Okay, she's evil, and she has evil cousins who are evil, and they require a lot from her, and they've signed her into this contract where she's an indentured servant. She has to work, she has to pay to live there, very evil landlord lady. And so she gets caught up in having to pay for this contract, and she keeps getting late on her payments, and so she misses one final payment, and her aunt sells her younger sister into slavery with the fairies. And yeah, that's literally how the book starts off, which is like a wild beginning to this book. So after her sister gets sold into slavery, she has to go into fairy, and the way to get into fairy is that there is this prince who is gonna have a ball. He's gonna invite a bunch of human women to join in because he is looking for a human bride because it's really hard for fairies to procreate. So this is her way into fairy, and she goes into fairy, and she was in love or had like this major crush on like the mage's assistant. And turns out when she goes into fairy, there's a bunch of dudes. I don't know. Anyways, there's a love triangle is what I'm trying to say. There's a love. The basic premise of this book is that there is a love triangle between her and two princes. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, the cover is literally her and two dudes. So you already know what's gonna happen. It's gonna be a love triangle. There's gonna be two dudes fighting for this girl. She's gonna be so amazing because there's two dudes fighting for her. I'm not gonna go over the whole book. I am just gonna give you some of the points of contention that I noticed, the things that I hated about this book and the things that I loved about this book, from my first review at least, right? So one of those things that gets compared to A Court of Thorn and Roses is the fact that there are similarities to the fairy worlds. For example, in this book, there's supposedly 7 mages. I don't know how to say that word. Apologies. There's 7 mages, and there is a shadow prince, and then there's like a golden prince. There's like the found family trope. There's a girl who is thrusted into fairy world, and she has powers that she didn't realize that she had. She has to train with this found family of hers, blah 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 blah, right? There's a lot of similarities within A Kotar and this book. I can't disagree with that. Particularly, one of the things that I really disliked was the found family trope that she included in this book, because it was not well done. Specifically, I feel like when you read A Kotar, or for those of you who have not read A Kotar, there's a found family trope in that book. But every single character in that found family is there's like reasons for every single character to be within that found family, right? And there's like roles, and those roles are very clearly defined, and every single character feels like they have a reason to be in that story. And every single, like, there's a lot of character development for each one of those characters. Whereas in this book, a lot of those characters honestly didn't need to be added into the book. Like, if you were to take those characters out of the book, the story would not change, the plot would not be affected. And to me, that kind of shows me, like, if you can remove a whole character from the book and the plot is not affected, then there's no reason to have that character besides perhaps like diversity, like you're trying to add like people of color into your book, so you just add these random characters in there. It kind of felt that way. The found family has to do with the shadow prince, right? Very much like A Kotar, where our shadow prince, shadow daddy, is Rhysand, and he has, right, his court of dreams. This is very much similar. We have Finn, who is dark hair and silver eyes, and he's like broody and moody, but he's actually really nice, and he like really cares for his found family. And yeah, so very similar to that. They have to teach her magic. They have to teach her how to use her magic. And that is very similar to A Kotar. I would say a little too on the nose for me. Too on the nose. There's like one female character in this book named Pretha, and very similar to, like, say, more in A Kotar. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that. It felt kind of forced. And mind you, like, it didn't feel forced because of the similarities of like the Shadow Prince and the Found Family, but specifically it felt forced because the characters had no actual development, or they weren't important to the storyline. Like, none of them affected the storyline in any significant way that made me feel like there was a purpose to them being in the story. So I just think that could have been better developed, and it would have made more sense, and we would have been able to vary away from the similarities to a different series, right? because it would have been very original, but it didn't feel very original. It felt more forced than anything. I also didn't like the fact that she arrived into fairy and suddenly she had these powers that she's had all along and she didn't realize that she had them. That's kind of like annoying. Like, how does she not know that she has them when she's been a thief and a spy, or like she steals to survive, right? And she's like one of the best thieves in the human world, and then she comes to Shadow World and suddenly she has these powers and she doesn't question them. She's like, oh yeah, I knew I had them all along, but I don't know how to control them. That just kind of felt cheap to me, and it kind of just made it so that it forced her into this found family and they would have to train her. I don't know. It would have been cool if we had a character that already had these powers and she knew how to use them. And so when she gets there, she's really good at maneuvering through everything, and she has like more of a leg up rather than having to now rely on these other characters to push the plot along with her, right? Another thing that I hated, absolutely disliked about this book, and this goes to any authors watching this right now, please stop with the terrible age gaps between the love interests. I mean, in this novel, it's a love triangle, and her love interest, one of them is 21 and she's 17, and the other one is like hundreds of years old, but she's 17. I just wish that would stop. Nothing in this novel would have made a difference if she had simply been 18 or 19, 20, 22, 25. It would have been awesome if she was older and this story happened, because then I wouldn't have been thinking like, but she's 17. Like, this dude's kissing on her, but she's 17. You know, it just kind of adds more to the manipulations of this book, right? So not only is she 17 and her love interests are like way older than her. I mean, 21, I guess you can get away with it. I guess you can get away with it. But the other dude is like hundreds of years older than her. Like, I don't understand. Like, why would you put your love interest like that? And like, she has no experience in these two worlds. Being a human, like at 17, you don't know anything, right? You don't have no experience being a human. You have no experience in the fairy world. And yet somehow you're telling me that this dude that's hundreds of years old is into this girl. Even though she's inexperienced and she's kind of annoying. Like, she's just like really beautiful and these dudes fall in love with her. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, she has no life experience. She has no personality outside of, I need to save my sister. I need to save my sister. And then I feel bad because I'm betraying these dudes. Like, why do we do this? Like, I think it normalizes age gaps between younger women and older men. Because, like, never is it written that it's a young 17-year-old guy who is gonna get with this 300, 500-year-old woman, right? Like, that's never written in these fantasy novels. So, like, why is it okay that a 17-year-old is getting with, like, a 100-year-old person or, you know, 21-year-old? Anyways, I digress. That's weird to me. And maybe we should stop writing those romances. I don't know. That's just, when I write my books, I'm not going to be writing age gaps like that. So she made choices. With that. Another thing that I hated is how juvenile her thinking is and her actions are, the main characters, versus like clearly how much older the writer was trying to make her seem. Right? Like, if she was trying to, I felt like she was trying to write her to seem like she was so much older because of the trauma that she's lived through. But then at the end of the day, like, she was still 17 and she got so annoying after a while. So, like, as I said, there's gonna be spoilers. So Sebastian Prince Ronan, he's like, she's in love with him, right? He was her neighbor, like her comfort. She's in love with him. He's a 21-year-old. And he wants her to be his bride, but she can't say yes because she hates fairy and they would have to be bonded, and she doesn't want to bond with him and she doesn't want to be a fairy. She doesn't want to live that life, right? And he's like constantly manipulating her as the book is going, because spoiler, at the end, like she had this power that he needed, and he was just manipulating her for the past 2.5 years, whatever. But the whole time that she's betraying him by working with like the evil king, she, like, her whole brain, like the whole time is constantly talking about how she's betraying him, she's betraying him, she's betraying him, how's he gonna love her, because he's like, it was like over and over and over and over again, and it was like being hit over the head with those feelings. Like, we got it the first 30 times you said it. It didn't need to happen every single page of this novel. One of the reasons why I hated Sebastian, was because there's a scene where he's like making out with her, like touching all up on her, and she's feeling, obviously, like, I'm betraying him, right? That stupid, it just was so repetitive over and over again. He leaves her room, and she has shadow magic, so she can blend into the shadows. So she goes into his room to like sneak up on him. I don't remember why, just to like scare him or something, like for fun. And he's making out with another girl. And that, to me, like, the moment that is added into a book, it's over. It's over. That's not your love interest anymore. Like, it's not a love triangle anymore. Hop on the other homie. Because I cannot stand characters when they do things like that. Like, this is not a dark romance, you know? So it's like, it's just romantasy. And also it's YA. So, like, I hated that scene where she goes in and he's making out with one of his like to-be potential brides. Oh my god, dude. Me freaking out right now. I hated that. Maybe because of my own life experiences that made my chest like cave in, and I like really felt that angst and that destruction of the soul. But yeah, so that happens, and then she immediately goes to go dance, and she starts drinking, and whatever. That happens, and a couple chapters later in the book, she like freaking does it with him, like, you know, they like have sex, and I don't understand. Like, you watched him make out with a different girl in front of your face after he was done making out with you, told you he had a meeting he had to go to, and he went to go mac on some other girl, and you saw it with your eyes, and you're still gonna give it up? Like, you see, like, choices. She's 17. She was 17. I have to continuously remind myself that, but I hated that. But it was really well written. Like, her whole like, oh, my heart broke, like, I hate him, I'm gonna go drink and dance, because yes, I feel that. But I hated that she still went out with this dude and still gave it up to him when he freaking was doing all that and like doing that behind closed doors, and she didn't know. And then he betrays her at the end, right? So it was just sad. Here are the things I loved about this novel. The love triangle. I'm gonna sound like a hypocrite right now, because the love triangle was pretty great. Like, it was greatly written. I wish that the characters were of similar ages. I wish they were 19, 20, just like her. But Lexi Ryan wrote a really great love triangle, in the sense that I had no idea who to trust or who she should be with. Like, the whole time it had me on my toes, because every like turn of the lead, like every time something like a new plot twist came up, like I was shocked. You know, I was just like, I mean, some of the things I knew were gonna happen. There's always some sort of betrayal, and it was also leading us in that direction that there was gonna be some sort of betrayal. I just didn't know who to trust. It just seemed like both of the characters were trash. Like, both of the men were trash, and she should choose none of them. And I kind of wish that she had done that, but obviously it's a romantasy novel, and that's not gonna happen. But I didn't know who she was going to choose. I didn't know who she was betraying. I didn't know who was really betraying who. And so that was really cool, and that was written really well. I love the banshee. There's like this spirit that it's kind of like a sleep paralysis demon, except that she's like lays on she lays on your chest, and then she is singing your name. And that's how you know that you're gonna die soon. That was freaky and very cool, and I really like that idea. I kind of wish more books had creepy stuff like that, at least romantasy wise. That was really cool. Yeah, I'm realizing now there's not a lot of things that I've truly like absolutely loved about this book, but the ending really, like, it went from like a 3-star, like a all right, this was okay. Like I said, I rate my books really high. If I found one thing entertaining about it, like, I'll rate it higher than it should probably be rated. So it was like a solid 3 stars. I was like, this was okay. And the ending of the book, the last quarter, Act 3, really just like bumped it up to a 4 for me, because I really enjoyed the betrayals. I really enjoyed not knowing who to trust, and it was good. I really like that. This is a very short review, so it is what it is. This is my first time ever reviewing anything on YouTube or on camera. I tend to just be talking to myself in my room when I'm reading, or to my boyfriend who does not know what the heck I'm talking about. But yeah, it was good. I liked it. But there was so many similarities to other books. There wasn't really anything new. So I couldn't give it 5 stars. Also, it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling. You know, that feeling when you read a book and you're like, wow, like I'm changed. Like, my life is changed. Like, it did not give me that vibe. It didn't give me that feeling. It didn't put me in that reading slump when you just can't stop thinking about a book. But it did push me into reading the next book, which I'm reading on the Hoopla app, that you can get for free with a lot of library cards. So, yeah, that's my review. This is probably all over the place, but it's my first review, so please don't judge me. I will be back and we'll be reviewing more books on YouTube, and yeah, so please subscribe. I'm going to be doing more reading, more Read with Anna, and more drawing and more different, my circus life, basically. But yeah, please subscribe.